Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York. Welcome to One to One. Each week, we address issues of timely and timeless concern with newsmakers and the journalists who report on them, with artists, writers, scientists, educators, social scientists, government leaders. We speak to each one to one. I'm pleased that Norris Church Mailer is able to be with us today. Her memoir, A Ticket to the Circus, has received the kind of reviews anyone, including her late husband Norman Mailer, dream of and covet. The book is fiercely honest, funny and touching, smart, and above all, loving. What a remarkable life you've led, from Little Miss Little Rock, to marriage to your high school boyfriend, to being a divorcee with a young child, to the chance encounter at a party in Russellville, Arkansas, that led 4 months later to moving to New York and living with the Norman Mailer, hence the circus. Tell me about, coming up with that title.
Oh, well, I was having a talk with my girlfriend, Margot Howard, who's an advice columnist, actually, and, we were talking about how I could have been so stupid and not picked up on the signs when my husband had this affair, and because he had had so many over the years. I was wife number 6. I mean, hello, you didn't think this might happen to you? And I was like, well, no, I didn't really think that, because he had been so true to me all those years. And I said, but I guess I bought my ticket to the circus. I don't know why I was surprised to see elephants.
And there you go.
And both of us said, that's a good title.
That's the title. So you came from a pretty working class childhood down in Arkansas. Tell us, how would you describe your childhood?
Oh, I had an idyllic childhood. Not many people can say that, but I was an only child. My dad did heavy construction, building dams and roads and stuff like that. He was a CB during the war, and my mom had a little beauty shop out in our garage, the Steel Magnolia kind of beauty shop. And, I got all the toys and have all the responsibility. I guess that's what only children do. Now,
your father had a serious accident on the job
yes,
that, disabled him to a certain extent, caused him a lot of pain for much of his life. And your mother had a problem with depression and rages, was it? Tell me, how did that affect you growing up?
I think it made me more responsible. It made me grow up a little faster than I probably would have otherwise, because I always felt like I was kind of in charge. I was the one that had to take care of things, and I learned to drive a car when I was 8. I mean,
really? I hope you weren't going very far.
Well, I went around those dirt roads around Arkansas, and I had to sit on a sofa cushion at first. Well, first I sat in my daddy's lap and learned to steer, and then I graduated to a sofa cushion until my feet could reach the pedals, and then when I was about 11 or 12, I was a pretty tall girl. I was driving my mother everywhere because she couldn't drive.
Okay.
So when, looking over my shoulder to see if the sheriff was after me, I was always terrified of getting arrested. And him was like, what, you're 12 years old?
Now, your mother actually, I guess, was hospitalized, underwent some shock treatments. I know that the treatment of mental illness has progressed sort of steadily. Do you think, given what we know about the treatment of mental illness today, that her life would have been different if she had been in a different, this had happened later, or not?
I think it would. I think with the advent of drugs like Prozac, and which she's on now, which has really changed her life in a lot of ways. If she'd had that when I was younger, it would have made a whole big difference in everyone's life, but she didn't have that. And I don't really know what went on with the shock treatments. She doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah. So you must have known from a very early age that you were a head turner, very attractive.
Well,
you won your first beauty pageant. Were you age 3?
I was 3. I was Little Miss Little Rock, and it wasn't like it is now with these little girls and their wigs and their curly lashes and makeup. And I mean, it was just little girls walking out on the stage, and kind of. But I got out there and I liked it. Boy, I liked that spotlight, and they couldn't get me off the stage.
Now, were there later beauty pageants as well?
Well, a couple. I ran for Miss Arkansas Tech.
Okay.
And got 4th runner-up, which gave me the impetus to do it again the next year, and I didn't win the next year. So, in fact, I had the flu or something that night, and had to keep going off stage to throw up. So that wasn't very attractive.
Being so attractive, did that give you, especially in the South where there's a lot of emphasis placed on female beauty, did that give you a sense of power or?
Well, yeah, it did. You have to just, you don't want to stand and shuffle your feet. Yeah, it did. I mean, people who are very, very smart or pretty or have, outstanding attributes, I guess, use them, and that's just one tool in your kit that if you can use it, that, go for it.
Mm-hmm. So you went off to college and you married young to
20.
your college sweetheart. This is Larry, and who went into, was it the Army or the Air Force?
It was the Army.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
He was in the ROTC.
Okay, and you had a son, Matthew. At what point did you realize that marriage was a mistake? Or what made you realize that?
I guess about 3 months after we got married. Yeah. I grew up in the Baptist church, and I don't know if anybody out there knows what that means. But
I do.
But in Arkansas in the 50s and 60s, it meant that you sat there 3 times a week and got told you were going to hell. If you did any little sin, like have a glass of wine or a beer, or certainly make love with your boyfriend before you got married, and that's exactly what we did when we were 17. And so I was on the road to hell if I didn't marry this guy. And, and he was on the way to Vietnam, which was kind of a road to hell itself. So I kind of talked him into marrying me, and I don't know why he did. I don't think he really much wanted to, but I don't know. He did. He married me, and he did go to Vietnam. And 2 weeks before he left for Vietnam, I got pregnant and had my son while he was, or our son while he was over there. And it was just hard. I had been dating him since I was 16. I never really dated anyone else. Certainly never slept with anyone else. And I began to realize when we started living together that I didn't know him at all. He was a different person than I knew. The cute football player was turned into a nuclear engineer. I mean, he was very interested in science, and I was an artist, and I was hanging out with the hippie crowd at school, and he thought my whole career was just playing, and we were just polar opposites. And I just realized I'm 20 years old, 21 years old, and I just don't want to live my life this way. Like a lot of people did. You got married, you made your bed, you laid in it. You didn't look back.
50 years later, right?
Like my parents.
So you're how old when you two split up?
I was 24.
Okay. So there you are. You're living in Russellville, Arkansas. You're teaching art. You're doing art. You're divorced with a young son. What kind of life were you imagining for yourself at that point in time?
Oh, I was going to go back to school and get my master's and teach in college. That would have been a great life for me.
And you were very happy.
I was happy. I didn't leave because I was unhappy. I loved Arkansas. I loved teaching. I loved art. I liked all the stuff I was doing. We'd go to craft shows, and I'd do your pencil portrait sitting here for $5. And I had a lot of friends who were potters and painters, and it was a great life.
And somewhere along the way, you met Bill Clinton.
I did.
And had a little romance. How did that happen, and what was that like?
Oh my gosh. It's been way blown out of proportion. He was cute. He was running for Congress. He was 27. Somebody invited me to a fundraiser for him, and walked in the door, and he was up there talking, and you know how charismatic he is.
Yes, I do.
mean, he's just so. I started. He wanted to know if I wanted to work in the campaign, so I didn't really, because I didn't really want to work in the campaign. I just wanted to see him. But I got involved with that for a few months one summer, and he was sweet, and I liked him. I still like him. He's,
still friends.
We're still friends
Okay.
to a degree.
Then you went to a book party one night that changed your life. Tell me about that.
Well, I had to coerce myself into this party because Francis Galtney, who was my friend and teacher, was old friends with Norman Mailer. They'd been in the war together. And they got together every 2 or 3 years when they were traveling around, if Norman was going to, give a lecture or something. So this is one of those things where 10 things have to line up in a row in order for something to happen. And they all lined up because I had just gotten Maryland, from the Book of the Month, which I would never have gone out and bought because it was $20, and I would never have spent that much on a book. But that came in the mail, and I read it and kind of liked it, and thought myself a writer too. I was taking creative writing, and although I was a painter, I thought I could write as well, and wanted to do that. And so I wanted to get my book signed and meet this famous writer. I would never meet another famous writer in my life, and so I called up Francis and said, "Can I come over and meet Norman Mailer and maybe get my book signed?" And he said, "Hell no, I'm not going to bother Norman with that fan crap." He was really upset. And
It seems a little strange because it was a book party, right?
well, it wasn't a book party. It was just a party for Norman.
Oh, I see. I see.
No,
okay.
No, he wasn't pushing a book.
Oh,
He was
okay.
It was just a.
Okay.
And he'd invited his friends and the English faculty. They were all dressed up, like we are today in our little suits. And
So you talked yourself into going.
so finally he said I could come, and I thought, well, I'll just run in and see how the wind's blowing, get my book signed, and run back out. And I don't even change. I'm wearing blue jeans, little hip huggers, and my shirt tied like this, and long hair, and walk in the door, and these big sandals that make me about 6'3", and walk in the door, and he's wearing jeans, the most patched jeans I've ever seen in my life. They were just patches on top of patches, and everybody else was all dressed up. And he gets up across the room and walks across, like in the slow motion thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he came over and stuck out his hand and introduced himself, and then he turned around and walked out of the room. And I was like, well, I guess he hates tall women. And then he sent Francis over to invite me to dinner. And I said, oh, Francis, I don't think that's a very good idea. I don't think Mr. Mailer liked me much. And Francis said, likes you, hell, he's the one who wants you to go. I don't want you to go. He was really being so bad to me that night. But I went, and I guess the rest is history.
There was a big attraction.
There was a big attraction.
Uh-huh.
It was, and I guess I'd never really had that love at first sight thing. It wasn't really love at first sight. It was intrigue at first sight, or it was, wild interest or something. I've just never met anybody like him. He had the craziest brain. I mean, he knew something about everything, and he was just endlessly fascinating.
And that's was that what attracted you to his intellect? And
It was.
Now he's twice your age.
Yeah. He was then.
He was twice. You were 26. He was 52.
Right.
He was still married to his fifth wife. He had at least I know at least one, maybe two girlfriends.
Well, he was actually still married to his fourth wife.
Oh,
But
really?
he'd been living with another woman who became his fifth wife.
I see.
For 5 years, and they had a daughter who was 4 or 5. And he had 2 or 3 serious girlfriends on the side.
Right.
One of whom was pressuring him to leave all of them for her, and it was a mess. And here I am, just kind of moving into it. No.
Well, we're going to take a short break for the following message, and then we're going to be back with more with Norris Church Mailer and find out the next part of the story. Author of A Ticket to the Circus. It's just been published by Random House. Welcome back to One to One. I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York, and I'm talking with Norris Church Mailer, author of A Ticket to the Circus, a memoir just published by Random House. So you and Norman start this correspondence, you get together in Chicago, you get together in New York, and then you decide you're going to pick up with your 7-year-old son and you're going to move to New York. What were you thinking?
I guess I wasn't thinking very much, was I? I was thinking that I could do anything I could do. I felt pretty sure of myself. I could teach, I could get a job doing something. I was supporting myself already. I didn't get child support from my husband and was already supporting my son, who was actually 3 at the time. And I just felt like I could take care of myself, and if this didn't work out, I'd do something else. And I'd always wanted to be a model. When I was a teenager, I used to model for the Log Cabin Democrat in Arkansas, doing pictures of, clothes and stuff for the local newspaper.
And you were not intimidated by this history, this complicated family history?
I wasn't, and I don't really know why. I think it's because I think it was being so confident in my love from my family, Because if you get that when you're growing up, it just doesn't go away because you move someplace else. You always have that feeling that you're loved and that you can accomplish anything you want to do.
How did your parents respond to when you told them?
Well, they were half killed. I mean, it was horrible. Their only daughter was taking their only grandson and moving to New York, to this horrible place, and with this man who'd been, please, they were just, they finally had to get over it. They didn't have a choice because they finally saw that I wasn't going to come back. But for years, my father would call me up and say, well, there's a little house on sale, down the street from us. Should I get it for you? And you think you might want to just have it
come back,
just in case?
come home. You
Yeah.
always come home. Once you got to New York, you were almost immediately hired, it seemed, as a model by one of the leading modeling agencies.
Yeah.
What was that like for a girl who had always worn polyester?
I know. Oh my gosh, it was, it's just like you run down the street and you click your heels. You can't believe it. It was just a dream come true. I never got to be a big model, but I had fun doing it. I couldn't really travel. I had the family.
Right.
And, I couldn't pack up and go to Europe for a year, which is what they wanted me to do. That's
right.
what they usually do for the new girls. And I do all the things that really you have to do, and I should have been younger.
Now, was it one of Norman's friends who hooked you up with the modeling agency?
Yeah, Amy Green called Wilhelmina and got me the interview.
Despite Norman's large and complicated family life, it seemed that the integration of you and your child with him and his children and even the mothers of his children seemed to have been relatively smooth. Was it smooth?
It was, and people just are boggled by that. But I think by the time I came along, his life was, the kids were in such shock from all these women back and forth and in and out, and he would stay with one 2 years and one 3 years, and then there'd be another kid, and I mean, it was just the kids were sort of jerked back and forth, and I was a kid, and the oldest one was my age, and we played, we had fun, we'd go to movies, and we'd go out in the yard and play ball, and I was sort of like their sister, but at the same time I was not their mother exactly. I never, the younger one's more of a mother figure, I guess.
Right.
But
were there any conflicts with any of the wives or girlfriends?
Oh, sure. Well, the girlfriends I didn't interact with much. The wives, some were my friends. Some are my friends now. Some were never my friends and never would be. There was 5 of them, so things change over the years. One that I thought I'd never be friends with is one of my dear friends now.
Which one is that?
Carol.
Okay.
Maggie's mother, yeah.
Tell me about your adjustment to New York City and to Norman's huge circle of friends, which sounded like a whirlwind of parties, social engagements, cultural events with a whole lot of famous and accomplished people.
Well, I was just sort of like dropped in there, and it was okay. These are the people he knew, and I think it would have been the same no matter what he had done, whatever his friends were. I would have, tried to get to like them and know them, and I wasn't really intimidated. I guess too stupid to be. I don't know.
So Norman was widely viewed by people, certainly in the women's movement at the time, as a sexist pig.
Yeah.
He was not popular.
No, he wasn't.
Was he?
No, he was not a sexist pig. He said some stupid things. He thought he was funny. He had a very strange sense of humor. Like, his remark to, I think it was Orson Welles, of Orson, women should be kept in cages. I mean, would anybody think that was a serious remark? They still quote him on that remark, with him really making out like he was thinking women should be put in cages. I mean, it was ridiculous. And he certainly thought women should have the same rights as men and the same salary as men, and he was, for women's right to choose. I mean, he was good on all that stuff. He did, he liked to jerk chains, and he liked to cause controversy, and and they liked it too. So, he went head to head with a few of them, like Town Bloody Hall with, Germaine Greer, and all about that, I'm sure.
Do you think when I read about, his life, I mean, it seems sort of like shades of Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah.
With the sort of a macho man, and with a writer, and lots of women. Do you think he thought of himself in that vein?
Oh yeah, he admired Hemingway. Yeah, it's always who is the next Hemingway. Who is better than Hemingway? Am I better? Is he better? And I don't know. I don't know if other writers think that way. I never thought in terms of better than. I don't think I'm a better writer than anybody else. And it's just what we do is so different.
Yeah, I think men are pretty competitive, though.
I guess men in general are different, and he certainly was. He was very competitive, even with me. I mean, he didn't encourage me to write. I don't know if he was. I don't think he was afraid I was going to beat him or anything, but he didn't encourage it.
So.
Had to sneak around and write my
Did
first
you really?
novel. Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah. Yeah, the first time when I met him, I was writing a novel. In college, I was finishing up my degree. And I had about 100 pages, and finally, he knew I was doing it. Finally, he asked to read it, and I gave it to him, and he took it downstairs and came back up and said, well, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, which just, devastated me. So I put it in the drawer and didn't look at it for 20 years. And went on and painted and modeled and did all this. And, truly, I wasn't in a big rush to be a writer then because I was having too much fun doing all this other stuff. But
what do you think that was about?
what, the novel?
Now, his not being encouraging.
I don't think he liked the book very much. Our styles are so different. I mean, they're just diabolically different. But anyway, the novel still kind of kept bouncing around in my head, and years later, he discovered that I really could write. We wrote 3 screenplays together, and not to bore you with the whole details, but I started writing this novel without telling him because I didn't want him to, knock it out of me again.
Right.
And I finally let an agent read it, who was a friend, before Norman read it. And the agent called me up at 11 o'clock at night and said, "I'm assigning you to a contract. Go upstairs and get back to work." And
wow.
So, but I was afraid to let him read it. And finally, it came out in galleys just the step before being published. And he said, "I think it's time I read this book." And I was like, "Well, okay." So he took it upstairs, and I'm downstairs waiting, hoping that he's going to like it. And he came down with this stack of papers and handed it to me, and he said, "Here, you put these changes in and I'll work behind you." And I said, "Changes? You're editing my book?" And I'm like, "No, you're not editing my book. This is my book.
Right.
It's not going to be our book. No." And he said, "Well, if I can't edit, I can't read it." And I said, "Well, you read it when it comes out."
In the course of your relationship with Norman, you got to model professionally, you published 2 novels, you got to act in the theater and in at least 2 movies, right?
Yeah, little parts.
You directed a theater company, you co-wrote screenplays with him, you traveled all over the world. Would you have gotten to do, even with the same capabilities, would you have gotten to do these things if you had not
Met
been
him?
Norman Mailer's partner?
Well, of course not. No, I would have done other things. I might have moved to. I'd applied to RISD. I'd applied to Mass Arts in Boston. I might have gone to Boston to graduate school. I might have met someone else. The road not taken. There were so many roads not taken. It could have been anything. I might have stayed in Arkansas. I have no idea what would have happened. This is just what happened to me.
So at some point, you've been together for a long time, you found out that he wasn't being faithful.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, why would that come as a surprise?
I know. There was. You bought your ticket. How
right.
Did you? Because when we got together, one of the things that he was so adamant about was he wanted to try a relationship with a woman based on monogamy. He had never, ever done that. He had cheated with every woman he'd ever been with, starting with, first girlfriend, I guess. And he wanted to see how deep a relationship could go if there was total fidelity. And I really, truly believe that for at least 7 or 8 years, he was true. I think he really gave it a good shot. And then one day he didn't. And I guess it's the old 7-year itch, whatever it was. And then I started finding out that it was, kind of a lot. It wasn't just one person. It was a lot of them.
We've got just a minute left.
Oh,
but
no.
If you had to do it over again, would you?
Yes, I would, of course. I would. In spite of everything, I loved the old coot. I really did. He was the most interesting man I'd ever met. He was a great dad. He was, the kids all love him. It was a wild ride.
It was a circus, but it was a great show.
It was a great show.
Okay. I wish you had more time. Very interesting book.
Thank you so much, Cheryl.
I want to thank Norris Church-Mailer for joining me today. A Ticket to the Circus, a memoir, has just been published by Random House. For the City University of New York and One to One, I'm Sheryl McCarthy. If there are any people you'd like to hear from or topics you'd like us to explore, please let us know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.